So, okay. So today's class, we're going to go through and talk about Dotloop. And the idea is just to give you kind of the basics on it. And then I'll just answer questions and things as you guys have them. And we'll just kind of go through with that. So, so with that, we're going to jump right in because I actually have, which this usually takes about an hour anyway, but I have another phone call, training, a meeting, whatever, conference call that I have to jump onto at 11. So, but we should be done by then anyway, or at least real close. So, all right, I'm going to get going. So let me share my screen here with you guys. And looks good. I think everybody can see it. Okay. So to access Dotloop, so really just to start off with, you want the lights off?
Yeah.
Okay, just to start off with on yeah, on Dotloop, when you log in, so you're gonna go to dotloop.com, you should have received your login information from Jeanette as to what your username and your password is, and have that set up and ready to roll. So when you first log in though, there's the main thing I first want to show you, because we had an agent recently that, in fact, I think it might have, was it you, Batsu, where we were having trouble with your account? Yeah, so in fact, it's Bata that's here. So we had, she was having an issue where she was creating loops, but then she couldn't share it to the company. And it was because her account on the company account wasn't working. So really kind of that's where I want to start with, is to make sure that when you log into Dotloop, you want to make sure that you can see right here where my mouse is, it says premium. You want to make sure when you're logged in that it shows that. And in fact, she had, in the past, I think you said you had paid, she had even gone and signed up and paid Dotloop because she thought that's what she had to do. But the challenge was what had happened is just her one with the company somehow got deactivated. So anyway,
so the money didn't come through.
Yeah, so but here's the point. You don't need to pay anything to Dotloop in order to have access and to be using it, because the company has taken care of that for you and signed you up for this premium account. So so anyway, so when you log in, just make sure that you're seeing premium right here. And because if it is saying something along the lines of pay to upgrade or whatever, you are not in the right account. Okay. And if you're not in the right account and you create the loops and all that, it's not going to be accessible from the company. Okay. So that's first thing with Dotloop, to make sure that you understand. Second thing for you to make sure that you understand is, here's how I like to explain Dotloop. If you will think about it as being a filing cabinet, because sometimes people have a struggle with it. And so for me, what I found is if you will just think of Dotloop as being a filing cabinet. So meaning if we weren't doing this electronically, really nobody would have any issues. So I'm speaking now to the people who typically aren't tech savvy. If you didn't have it on the computer and you were going to be writing a contract, you would get an actual document, you would fill it out. And then chances are when you got back to the office, you would create a folder that you're going to put that contract in, and then you would put that folder into a filing cabinet to keep track of it. If you will think of Dotloop as being the filing cabinet in itself, then it will be helpful for you. And if you will think about the loops as being a folder that you would then put inside of the filing cabinet, that will help you also in understanding how the process works. So anytime we say Dotloop, think about a filing cabinet. When we say loop, create a loop, think of it as you're just creating a file folder that you're going to keep all of the documents in. Okay. All right. So now we're on the dashboard here of Dotloop. And I just want to walk you through and show you a few of the things that are on here, and then we'll get into some of the detail on it. So up here at the top, it has reporting. You'll probably never use that. And honestly, I don't even really know a ton about it, but it'll have on here some data about your loops and those kinds of things. I actually never use it. I don't think you ever need to use it. So I'm not really even going to in this basics class. worry about it. The next thing over is the loops. Under this loops section, when you click on loops, it's going to bring up all of your loops. So again, think of it as like you just went to a filing cabinet, you've opened the filing cabinet. These are all the files that are inside of that filing cabinet. And that's what the loops are going to look like. Okay, so you do have some options here within the loops. So right here, I can do it as a list view. So if you'd rather see a list rather than a grid, you can switch those here. I don't know what I don't know if compact is just even a smaller list. So whatever view you prefer, you can just control that here. So either the grid, the list, or the compact is even just a smaller version. Okay, I usually typically just leave mine on the grid view. So that's that. Okay. All right. And then it also has a place you can do filters so that as you get more and more transactions, you could filter it based on under contract, sold, kind of however you want to do that. But that's the loop section. Okay. So think of it as just once I got into the loops, I'm now into this filing cabinet and here's all my files that are available for me. Okay. The next here, which you'll probably never use, is a task section. So for those of you that are tech savvy and would want to use something like this, you can go through and create a list of tasks. So if you wanted to, which again, let me preface this with, most are never going to use this section. So if you're not tech savvy, I would say probably don't even worry about using the task section. Okay, but you can go in there and create tasks, and then you could even assign those tasks to your client to do certain things. Or if you have an assistant, you could assign it to your assistant to do certain things as well. But that's the task section. Okay, so like I said, I'm not going to spend much time on it because we're not really probably going to use that anyway. Next is the people section. This has either trusted service providers that you could go through and connect and put people in as trusted service providers, but it also has your list of contacts of anybody that you have within the system here. Again, you'll probably never really go into that. You will use the contacts, but you're probably very, very rarely going to go into there. Okay. And then this last section is the templates piece. So this is where all the forms are. So under this templates section, you'll notice it's got documents, and then it's got personal and inbox, and then all C21 and MLS forms. The rest of these are going to be some of the that you're probably never going to use. So the personal is, you can see I've used this before to put certain things in there that I just want to hold in there, but they're just in my personal inbox, okay, or personal documents. Then there's the inbox here, which probably not going to use. I'll show you later on how you can get stuff into the inbox, but you're probably really not going to end up using it that much, so don't worry about that. But then all C21 and MLS forms. This is where all of our forms are housed. So if you're wanting to get in and get a form for some reason that you wanted to print out. Now, so let me explain the difference here. So make sure you're paying attention on this. If I was going to fill out a purchase contract, I'm not going to go here to do it. This is where I would go if I wanted to download one. So if I was going to get an actual signature, not a digital signature, an actual signature from my client, I would come into this all C21 and MLS forms under the template section up here. And then from here, if I was wanting this confirmation of earnest money receipt, I could download that right here. So I would go in and download it, then I could print it off and take it with me to have the client sign. So, but even with that, you're still probably not going to typically do it that way as much. So let's get into how we're really going to use the system. Okay. But I just wanted to explain what these are. So we're going to go back to loops. Probably 98% of what you do in the system will be contained under this loops section. So really, you could almost forget everything else that I've said so far about these top pieces up here, and just remember what we're going to talk about next, which is the loops section. Okay. So let's say that I've got a buyer or a seller, it doesn't matter which, that I am going to want to put together contracts and things for. The first thing that you're going to do on Dotloop is you're going to come in here and click add loop. it's gonna ask you for either the property address or an MLS number. Now, if you know an MLS number and it is a property that is on the MLS, go ahead and throw in the MLS number. Outside of that, you're typically just gonna throw in a property address there, but you also can just name it whatever. So meaning, let's say that I picked up a buyer and I was gonna start working with this buyer, but I don't know what house they're gonna buy yet. So I'm obviously don't have a property address or an MLS number for that person. Then I can actually even just put in the name of the person. So I'll just put test buyer in here, okay? So I can just put in test buyer as being the name of the loop. So whatever you put in right here is what is going to be the name of that loop. Now, occasionally I'll have an agent text me or call me or something and ask me, hey, can you take a look at this loop? Or they'll say, can I share this loop with you? And ultimately, I don't need you to share it with me because I have access to everything within the company. What I would need to know is the name of the loop. It'll be whatever you typed in right there. So we're gonna just, to begin with on this one, just put down that it's test buyer is the name of that I want to name this loop, okay? So I'm gonna hit continue. The next step is it's asking for the template. Which template am I wanting to use? So here are the different choices that we have available within the company. Is new listing or new listing blank loop. So let me explain what the difference of those is. New listing is going to be just a loop that you are creating that is going to be for a listing. There will be nothing in there. So in fact, well, I was going to do it, but actually I'm not. So the next one down is new listing blank loop. So let me explain the difference. The blank loop is, and I think I just said this backwards. So let me correct what I said. New listing is going to be a spot where essentially think of it as you're creating this folder, but it's going to have folders within the, or placeholders within the folder. Okay, so the new listing, so let me make sure I'm saying this so I'm not confusing everyone. The new listing is going to, when you create using that, which I'm going to do here in a second, it is going to have the placeholders for the minimum required documents that you're going to need. And maybe even if I didn't say minimum required, it's what is going to be most often required. Okay, so I'm going to select that. But before I do, the new listing blank loop, there's not going to be any placeholders in it. So I'll show you what the placeholders look like in just a second, but the blank one will look the same only without placeholders. The buyer under contract will be the same thing of it's going to have, here's the forms you're probably going to be needing to use, which I always recommend either do new listing or buyer under contract because it's then showing you, here are the forms you're going to need to fill out, which is probably a minimum number of forms that you're going to need to fill out. But if for some reason you were doing some strange transaction where you're like, yeah, it's not going to be a normal one, then you probably would want to use either the new listing blank loop or the buyer under contract blank loop. Okay. The other thing to remember is if I were using the buyer under contract, doesn't mean that they are under contract. It's meaning that my assumption is I will get them under contract, therefore I'll need that loop, okay? And then these last three is a relocation listing. So if you end up working with our relocation department and helping them on getting properties sold or bought, then you would use the relocation listing loop or the buyer relocation buyer loop or the REO listing, okay? So here's what I'm saying. For everyone on this call right here, you're going to either use new listing or buyer under contract. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select the new listing. So now that I've done that, I'm going to hit continue. The next step is I could upload a photo here. If you want to upload a photo, you don't need to. I never have. So I'm going to hit done. That's now going to create the loop. So you can see it's created the loop here. Now my options from here are that I can show the status and I could say that it's a pre-listing, which is typically what you're probably going to do to begin with, but you could just leave it blank as well. And since I don't even know at this point what the list price is, I'm just going to leave that blank as well. Okay, So down here, I can either create another loop, or most of the time, you're just gonna hit view loop. So I click view loop, which, by the way, this is being recorded, and I'll throw it up on the YouTube channel so you can go back and review it. Now, so here's what you'll notice, is you will notice in here under this that there are two file folders here. So there's a listing documents folder and an under contracts documents folder. The thinking or our assumption is that what's going to happen is I'm going to go get this property listed. We're going to then get an offer and get it accepted. And so therefore, we have these placeholders here. So if I had created the buyer under contract loop, it would look just like this. So it would not have this folder, the listings documents folder. It would have only this. This is what it would look like. Okay, so the only difference, the listing one has a placeholder for all the listing documents, and the buyer under contract only has this one. Yep. All right. So here's the idea then. These are all placeholders. You can see this one that where it's bold. Once it's bold, there's actually a document in there. So this one actually does have a document here. So if I click on it, it will bring it up to where I could go through and it's got these key division administrative rules for you as an agent. The idea of why we have those in here, which this is something we've recently added, but the idea of that is the division has certain expectations of our principal broker, who is now Rob Oakey, and Rob has put that in there so that every file that you do has that in there to where basically you like, here's what I'm saying. You probably should go open that and read through it at least once so that you know what's in there, because in the event there was ever a problem on a transaction and you tried to say, I didn't know or whatever, the company's going to say, we put that in there for you to review and to read through. So anyway, you should read through it at least once, but that's where you can tell. So any of these that are grayed out, there is not a document in there. This one, you can see it does have that, the division administrative rules in both of those. Okay. All right. So now I've got this opportunity to get a listing. So the first thing I'm going to do then is these are the forms that the company is saying you're going to at minimum need these forms as part of the listing agreement. So I'm going to start with adding the exclusive right to sell agreement. So if I come here and hover over this, so it shows optional, but if I hover over it, you can see it has add a file to this placeholder. So I want to do that. So I'm going to click. My options are I can either add it from my computer. So now remember, if I had downloaded this form and taken it and had the client sign, I could bring it back to the office. I scan it into the computer, and now I could have that file saved on my computer. So if I was going to upload a signed document already, I would be clicking on computer. But because I haven't done that yet, I'm going to click templates. So when I click on templates, it brings up that templates that I showed you earlier, which has your personal, the inbox, and then all C21 and MLS forms. So I want to go to all C21 and MLS forms. This now has all of the forms in here. So usually what I recommend is just start to type in what you're looking for. And we have put those to where they're coded to where you can type exclusive. And you can see every time I start to type, it's narrowing it down. So I can type exclusive right to represent, or I can put ERS in here, and that should also bring up this exclusive right to sell blank form. Okay. So you just can decide which one you want to use, you know, whether it's you want to type in exclusive or put in the ERS. But by typing in exclusive, you can see the first thing it's brought up is the buyer broker. And this one with the ERS is the exclusive right to represent. Okay. Or exclusive right to sell here. And then here's the exclusive right to sell blank addendum. But I'm going to go ahead and just add the exclusive right to sell agreement. So I hit copy. It's now imported that, and I just say okay. And you'll notice now that it has the exclusive right to sell put in there. Okay. The other thing to remember too is that they have it worded here the way that the form is saved as. So if I was wanting to add the seller property condition disclosures and I wasn't sure what it's called, I just type in that. So I hit add file, templates, all C21 and MLS forms, seller, property condition disclosure right here, and hit add. And it's importing, for some reason being slow. There we go. All right, so you can see I've added that. Then I could just go through and do that with the rest. So the PR, the preliminary title report's not going to be there. I have to get that from the title company. So that one will be left like it is. But the rest,
You edit to computer? When you
no, templates.
template.
Yeah, the only time I'm going to add from computer is if I already have the document signed by the client and I've imported it, scanned it into my computer. Otherwise, I'm doing templates. All right. So I'm going to just add these other two as well because we need these as well, is this wire fraud. So I'm going to go to templates. I'll C21 MLS, type in wire fraud alert disclosure. That one's for the buyer. This is for the seller. So I copy, I've added that. Affiliated business disclosure. And just remember, just type it in how it's here and you'll find the form you want. So templates. Affiliated business disclosure, seller, copy, and it's in. So the only one I have not put in is the MLS input form. So let me explain on that one. For me, I usually recommend that you fill that one out on the MLS. Go to the MLS and do start a new listing there and fill it out. And then once you've filled it out, download that to your computer. Once you've downloaded it to your computer, then I would come here and do from computer and upload it into here. So that's usually how I recommend to do it, because that way you're already getting everything input into the MLS so that when you get the property listed, all we have to do is publish to the MLS and it's ready to go. Good. All right. So for now, let's assume that I've gone out and created the one on the MLS and I'm ready to roll. So from here, then I'm just going to select all. I'm going to get rid of this one because we really actually don't need that. And I'm going to hit open up here. So there's two ways I could go about it. I could either, let me deselect these. So you'll notice there's nothing to choose from up here. I could just click on this if I wanted to fill out only this form. I could just click on it and it would open it up to fill it out. But since I have all of these, I want to fill them all out at the same time. So I select those, and now it gives me the option up here to either archive, make a copy, open, print, download, or fax. Okay, so I'm going to open. When I hit open, that's going to now bring up this autofill box. Now, the idea of this autofill is so that I don't have to keep typing the same information over and over and over again onto these documents. I can put them in one time and it'll autofill them in all of them. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first, I don't have a buyer, so I wouldn't have that. I'm going to go here to select seller and I'm going to select person. Now, the people that are automatically part of this loop is yourself. So I'm part of it because it's my loop. So your name would show there. The office is going to show here, and then the company. The next step would be to add a person. So because this is a brand new listing that I'm going to be doing, I'm going to hit add person. Now it's going to give me the place to add the person. Now there's tons of information on here, but the three things that I recommend that you put in when you're filling this out is the name of the client. So first and last name. So I'm just going to put it in as first and last for the name. Okay. Then I'm going to put in their email address here. So you want to click down, oops, add person. So I would want to then type in their email address here and their phone number. So the three things that I would say to put in here is those three. Now, outside of that, if it's a listing, you could put in the address of the property. You could fill out all of this if you want. But then what I recommend you do is hit send intro email and add the person. By doing that, it's going to add them to the loop, and it's also going to, so I'm just going to put in, I think I have Rick in here, Bentley. So I'm going to just select him. But it's going to put them into the loop. Okay. Now, let me point out one thing. Make sure that everybody's paying attention on this piece. You'll see here, this has add to my team. What typically happens is most people will look at that and think, oh, well, yeah, I want to add the client to my team. You actually do not want to add them to your team. So think of it this way. You only want to check this box for add to my team if you want them to see your commission that you're going to make, your version of it. Because, and why I say that is because anything that's in the loop, if you put add to my team, that person will be able to see everything in that loop. Meaning they can even go in and see how much commission you personally end up making off of this transaction. So don't select add to my team unless you want them to see everything. So the only time you would do add to my team is if it is an assistant or it's another agent that's helping you on the transaction that you're like, no, I need them to be able to help me. Then you could at that point select the add to my team if you really want them to be added that way, them to be able to see, okay? All right, so I'm gonna just select Rick here. I'm gonna hit add person. Okay, so now you can see he's up here as seller number 1. If there's a seller number 2, I would do the same thing. You'll notice he's now part of the loop here. I could come down here, I could come down here and do add person. And let's just see. I'll just put my wife in here or whoever. Okay, so now you can see I've added that one. I hit add person. I've got those 2 added, okay? Listing agent is going to be me, so I don't need to do add person because I'm already there. So I just select my name and I'm in there. From here, I can now put in the address of the property. So if I wanted to put in the address and stuff, so I didn't have to autofill it every time. I'll put in the address of my first house here. And city, Salt Lake City, Utah, and all right. So I'm going to hit autofill. Now, by clicking autofill, you'll notice what just happened is it put in both the seller's names here. It put in my name as the listing agents, put in the address of the property. So it's auto-filled a lot of the information on here so that as I scroll through to get down to the next form, it's got the seller's name, the property address, all of that. So I don't have to go retyping all of that information.
Okay, how did you do that? So
How did what?
automatically filled out. Mine is never automatically filled out.
You have to do autofill.
Okay. So when you set the seller 1 and after then close it or just autofill for.
Well, for seller 1, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So once I did this, if I did add person, I would type in their information and hit add person.
Oh.
And then they're added.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay, so now from here, oops. All right, so from here now, I just would go through and finish filling out the form. So I would put in the date, the month, the year, the expiration date, the commissions, and then you'll notice along here, it's got a place for them to initial, and it's just showing as seller here. So this one is going to allow either of them to do it. So I want to select who I want to. It'll make it easier for you if you select who you want to initial each spot. So I'm going to click seller, come up here, and it gives the drop down and say Rick. Then I'm going to come here, seller, and put in Jenny. So there, now I've got the seller's initials added there. As I continue to scroll through and fill out the form, I'm just going to check whatever boxes apply. And then once I've done that and I get down to the end here, same thing. Who do I want to sign here? Click on it, come up to the top, put in Rick. Who do I want to sign here? Jenny. And the agent is me. I'm going to assign that one to me. And then you'll notice because it's me in here, I could do sign now. So I just hit sign now, brings up my information. It's signed by me. Okay. So same thing with the rest of this. I'm just filling out, well, obviously don't fill out the seller disclosure. But I do want to point out something that most of the time it's going to automatically drop in for their initials, the seller's initials along this. But you just always want to make sure it has their initials there. And if it doesn't, then add them. So just make sure on the wire fraud. Yeah, see, for whatever reason, the listing agreement didn't have them auto-filled. It just showed seller before. But you can see I've got it changed to it's got their initials there. All the rest of these are good.
So you, when you edit the person, you have to save it, and after saving, you have to push the button after fill, and then comes out everything automatically, yeah?
So
It didn't work for me.
let me see, hang on.
It's just nothing comes out after fill,
So you did autofill
you know?
and you got Rick there. Okay, good. So autofill.
If I see it, oh, Airbnb is.
So sorry guys on Zoom, I'm just trying to see if I can see what.
All good.
Did you put in
Yeah, he's a
his
seller.
email address and stuff?
Yes,
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not coming up there. Oh, because you put it under seller and so
Okay.
it's,
okay, cool, okay. Go to that one,
yeah.
and then ship to the buyer.
So
Oh, I didn't put his.
you didn't
email.
put his information. Okay, that's why.
Information,
Okay. All right. Okay, so now that I've got this all filled out, so we're gonna assume I've gone through and filled all of this out. And just as a reminder again, seller disclosures, you don't fill this out, you're gonna let them. So I'll explain how we do that in just a second. Okay, so for now, all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna save these, okay? And the reason I'm saving it and not doing the save and share, I did just save, is because I don't wanna send, I wanna send them separately. Well, let me back out of here, show you what I mean. Anytime you exit out, it's gonna always ask you if you wanna save if you haven't, so decide if you do or not. And it's also gonna ask you, do you wanna share, which I don't want to right now, okay? All right, so now I've got these filled out, but you'll also see it shows not submitted and there's nothing in right here after this exclusive right to sell, and it just has share right there, okay? I want to share the seller property condition disclosure separately to my client. I want to share it on a separate email to them. And the reason is this. They're going to need to fill out that seller disclosure. And I don't want them to be able to fill out any of the other forms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select exclusive right to sell, wire fraud, and the affiliated business disclosure. And then I can either open it or I can just hit share. Okay, so I'm going to hit share from here. From this share, you'll see that it's got the people here and they each have 4 fields that they're assigned to do. Okay. Oh, actually, I take that back. We can do it differently now. So, all right, scratch that. I'm going to share all of them. So scratch what I just said. We want to share all of them. But when I hit share, no, yeah, never mind. Sorry. I'm not doing a very good job on this. I apologize. We do want to do that one separate, okay? So I'm going to do share, and on this, I want them to be able to sign only. So here's the options on these forms that I'm sending to them, is they can either view it only, which that wouldn't do any good, because if they can view only, they couldn't sign it. Well, I want my client to sign it. So I'm going to do can sign. The other option is can fill and sign, which I don't want them to fill any of those forms out. So I don't want to do can fill and sign. And can edit in private means they could do everything. So I only want to do can sign, okay? So on that one then, I'm going to do attach email. So I'm actually not going to send this to my wife. I'm going to do it just to Rick. He doesn't mind. I usually click on attach PDF so they can have a copy as well. And I'm going to hit share. Okay. So now it's just shared that over to Rick. So let me show you what that looks like here. So now that I'm back here, you can see this one shows not shared. These 3 are waiting on others. And if I hover over it, it shows still waiting on Rick to sign. Okay. So now I'm going to deselect all those and I want to send this one to the sellers. So I'm going to hit share. And on this one, again, I want him to be able to fill it out and sign it. So I'm going to put can fill and sign. That way, Rick can go through and check all the boxes on the seller disclosure and sign it, okay? And again, I always do attach PDF and share. So done. All right, so now you can see it shows that these are all waiting on him to sign. Now, if I came and hovered over this, if Rick had looked at the document but not signed it yet, if I hovered over this, it would show and say that he had viewed the document but not signed. Once he's signed, it won't look in this orange anymore. It'll instead just say signed. Okay. So that's how you can keep track of what's going on with it, is I can go hover over this and know, hey, he hasn't even looked at it yet. All right. Now, once he sends it back to me, so once he goes through and signs it and then sends it back to me, then from there, sorry, okay. Once he's done that and sent it back to me, the next step then is, so now again, so let me go back to pretend we were, what?
Something approved and then returned and then like this kind of thing, if somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm not that far yet.
Oh, okay.
So, now I lost my train of thought. What was it?
Sorry about
That's okay. Oh, yes, okay, so go back to, assume that we're not using this on a computer. Let's assume you had the listing agreement, you went out and met with your seller, they signed everything, and you're now back at the office. Now, forget Dotloop for a minute. If you had done that, let's say that you had just gone out and they had signed all your documents, what would be the next thing you would do? Once you got a signed agreement, you brought it back to the office, what would you do with it? Would you just put it in a file and file it away? Or what would you do?
Review.
Review?
Mhm.
What do you mean by review?
And you have to check that, but just the signature or whatever.
Okay, good. Yeah, so you're gonna check and make sure they've signed. Good. So, which again, I could go in and I could click on this, look through to make sure that all the initials and stuff are there. Good. Now what? Somebody on Zoom. What would, pretend we don't have an electronic version of this. We actually have just gone and signed it. What's the next thing you would do?
If not electronic.
Scan it into your computer.
Say that again, Abe.
Scan it into your computer.
Okay, but let's forget about Dotloop. Let's forget about computers for a minute. We don't have computers. What would you do with that? And maybe I'm not asking the question very well, but what do you think you would need to do with that listing?
Transaction coordinator, you have to send.
Bring it over to your broker so they can go over
Okay,
it.
good, perfect. That's, you got to turn it in, right?
Mhm.
So that's the thing, is keep it, now remember, so just keep in mind, what I'm trying to do is have you see kind of the connection of what we've had people do is they go get it signed
Mhm.
on Dotloop and then they don't do anything with it. That would be no different than if you went and met with a seller, had them sign a listing agreement, and then you went and put it in your file in your office and never did or said anything with it ever again. What would happen to that house?
So Russ,
Yeah,
if we are working with the TC, are we to assume that the TC is doing that with my broker or with you guys?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so here's the thing, just keep in mind, like, without Dotloop, if you had gone out and had a client sign paperwork, you got to turn it in somewhere, right? Well, the same thing with Dotloop. Once it's all signed and stuff, we still have to turn it in. Until you turn it in, the office doesn't know it exists. Even though yes, it's in, meaning it would be no different than if you just took a listing and then came to the office and went and found a filing cabinet and stuck it in there and said, okay, well, it's the company has it. I mean, yes, we have it, but if you didn't tell anybody, then nobody knows that you went and put it in this filing cabinet. That's how, same thing with Dotloop. So the next step is, once all of these things are signed, the next step that we're going to do then, I was just checking to see if Rick maybe actually went in and signed it. He did. So the next step would be, I got to turn it into the office. Okay. So what I want to do then is I would go and select all the ones that I want to turn into the office. And up here, you would hit submit for review. So once I hit for submit for review, that's how the company's gonna now know. So the first thing it's gonna ask for here is just this listing information. So it's gonna ask for you to fill in the property address, which you can see I've already got that in here because I put it in the loop. And so I need to put in the expiration date, the list date, and the list price. And then I would hit next, and I think, I actually don't want to submit this, but at that point, so once you hit submit for review, so just remember, the main thing on this piece that I want to make sure you guys remember is until you hit the submit for review, the company doesn't know you have filled out the form or your client has signed it. Even though, yes, it's in the system and yes, we could go find it. But think of it as it would be no different that without a computer, if you filled it out, brought it in, and then went and found the filing cabinet that we keep listings in, which we don't have one anymore, but if we did, and you just went and stuck it in there and never told anybody, nothing would happen with that listing, would never get on the MLS, nothing would ever happen with it. Well, same thing with this. If you don't submit for review, they don't know about it. So the other piece of it to remember is you also don't need to submit for review every time you get something. You can, but just kind of remember that, think of it as just if you were doing it the old way of, doing homework or something like that from school, until you turn it into the teacher, they don't know that you did it. Well, the same thing with us. So also you don't have to do it right. Like, meaning, let's say that let me try to think of something that would be an example. Well, let's say the wire fraud or the affiliated disclosure. Let's say that I forgot to send those over. Once I get them, I could just come up and hit, I probably shouldn't say what I'm about to say. Just hit submit for review. It's better to submit for review and maybe you didn't need to, than to not submit for review when you should have. So I was just going to kind of go through of like when you would and wouldn't need to. Just know it's better to err on the side of submitting for review. Okay, that's probably the best way of saying it. But the key thing is, so once I've done that, so now I've done submit for review. Let me back out of here. I'm going to go into a different loop here. So now that I've done submit for review, let's see. No, not that one. Then once it actually is reviewed, what's going to happen then? Okay, this will work. So you'll be able to see kind of off to the side here what's happening with things, and off to the side over to here. Okay, so once you've submitted it for review, it'll either get approved, which in this case you can see when I hover over it, it says great, or on this one here it was returned. So they returned this, excuse me, because and the reason is, it says right here, we'll show you the reason why. Missing second agent signature. So it was missing a signature, so it got returned to me. So I would just go fix that, and once I fix it, then I would select, come up here and submit for review, and then it's gonna be hopefully looked at and then come back as approved, like these ones are. Okay, so you can always see any notes from the TC department over here. So like, in fact, on this one, I've got here the accepted contract, the due diligence, and the wire fraud. Well, initially, they had put a note in here that I was missing the wire fraud and the affiliated disclosure, or the due diligence, that I was missing them. Well, I really wasn't. They were up into here. So that's why they put this note in there that they exist there. So that's kind of the way to think of it, is once you get all the documents, you get them signed, you're then going to submit for review. Once it's submitted for review, you're going to want to keep an eye on then. Oops, I didn't want that. I want to then keep an eye on any of the notes to see, has it been approved, and any notes that they put in here. Okay. All right. So now there's a couple other things that I'm going to go through and then we'll be done. Next is, so then now on this listing, let's say that all of this gets approved, the MLS, it goes on the MLS, we get an offer. Once I get an offer in, I'm going to do everything for that down in this section. So I'm going to now, I've gotten this new, I'm gonna mute you, Abe. We could hear some background noise there from your guys doing your windows or something. So, I'm gonna now handle all the under contract stuff here. So when I get the purchase contract and somebody emails it over to me. So this is gonna be the next way I'm gonna show you how to get forms into the system. So let's say that somebody emails me a purchase contract on this listing. Once they email it to me, there's two ways I could go about getting that uploaded here. So I'm gonna come here and I'm gonna do add file. And this time I'm gonna choose from computer. Okay, so now, because if they send it to me as an email, I could then save that to my computer. I would come here and do from computer, find where I saved it in my computers in the downloads or whatever. And boom, and then I would upload that into here. So now you can see it shows document added here. And now it's showing that the REPC is there, which I didn't actually upload a REPC, but I just grabbed a PDF. So now you can see that it's put in there. Okay, so then from here, I would open it up. And let's assume this was a REPC here. Then what I would do is go through the REPC and I can add signatures anywhere that I would want that to be signed. So I would drop into the sign here, and anywhere that I needed to add initials on that REPC, which is typically the bottom of the page, I would go down to there and add that and assign it to Rick. And if I would add another person, drop theirs, assign field, put the other person in there. And same thing with on the sign here, assign and sign there. Okay, so I would just go through and drop in the initials and signatures that I wanted to get from the people. Then I just would do save and share. Decide who I want to share it to, can sign and share. Okay, so now that one's been shared to them. Okay, so that's how I'm going to do that. Now there's one other way I could go about getting that file put in here as well. And that is if it came to me in an email, so the other agent emailed it to me, I can click add document here. And then the options are I could go get something from templates, I could browse my computer, or I can just forward that email right into the system. So if I click on email, it gives you this long email address and I do copy to clipboard. I could now, I don't know if I have any that with a PDF on here anywhere. Yeah, it doesn't look like I do. Oh, right. No, it's not a PDF. I don't know, it doesn't matter. Anyway, what I could do is I just hit copy, then I would go to my email.
PDF.
What?
What is it? DocuSign? Is it DocuSign? Division? Whatever.
This?
Up. You can write there PDF. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's okay. So, but I just want to do copy. I would do copy email to clipboard. Then I could go to my email and hit forward on the email that I got that has the contract in it. Drop in this email address. So just Control V to paste it in and then forward the email. And then what happens is this long string of information here is telling Dotloop to drop that PDF from the email into this folder. And then it would put it right into this folder. So hopefully that makes sense. If that was too confusing, just download it and do the browse to your computer. Okay. All right. That is essentially the basics of Dotloop. So tell me, what questions do you guys have based on it?
Yeah, I have a question to ask.
Okay, go ahead.
So say you have a couple of buyers, which I actually potentially may have a couple.
Okay.
You would come on to this Dotloop, you'd type in the name and everything, right? Now, do you have to fill out each and every one of these documents when you're just in the process of looking for a home, or would you just fill out the buyer broker agreement and then when you actually found a home, fill out the rest of the information there?
Yeah, good question. So let's just, this one is a listing one, but if I scroll down to here, this is what the buyer one would look like. So if you did just a buyer one, let's assume that's what I had done here. Then well, actually, no, this is different. Let me go create. So yeah, if I had, for the scenario you were just talking about, I would just put in test buyer to whatever. Okay, I want to add the buyer under contract. Say done, and view, I'm just gonna go to view loop. All right, so here it is. So yeah, basically what you were saying, I wouldn't worry about commission report, MLS printout, confirmation, REPC, the property condition disclosures, this. Basically, what I would be doing is I would add the buyer broker, I would add the buyer due diligence. This one, I probably would wait until I had found a property, but then I would have them sign it then. And same with the wire fraud and affiliated. So really, I guess ultimately, to answer your question, at minimum, I would do the buyer broker. You could
Okay.
do the rest of these if you wanted, but I would say typically you're gonna wait till you find a property and then do the rest of these along with the REPC.
Okay, so the buyer, we find a property, or right when we sit down and agree that I'm gonna help them find a house, we fill out the buyer or broker
Yes.
agreement. And then when we actually find a property, then we'll fill out the rest, give an offer. If it gets confirmed, then we'll submit the rest of the paperwork.
Yep.
Gotcha.
So that's a good point on that is, so again, this is where I say I'm kind of iffy on if I should say this or not, but technically, if you just get the buyer broker signed, you could come and do submit for review, but the company's really not going to do anything with that until you get an offer accepted. So
Gotcha.
you don't need to do a submit for review on a buyer until you get an offer accepted. But
Okay.
but it wouldn't hurt. Like I said, that's why I was kind of saying you're almost better off to do the submit for review, even though they would just get it and go, okay, great, thanks. But
You're right.
so, but yep, that's how you would do it. So it's just, if I had a buyer and we had not found a property yet, I would meet with them, discuss the buyer broker, and then I would tell them, I'm gonna email it to you to sign and send it over.
Okay. And then same thing. Oh, go ahead.
So you could actually, let me just show you one other thing here. So I'm gonna go templates, this exclusive buyer broker. Let me just throw it in. The other thing you could do is, if they were right there with me, you can have them do. I could do this initial and oh, you have to assign it to them first. Oh well. Let's see. We add a buyer. Okay, so once you have their initials and stuff in there, you can come up here to the more and do a host in-person signing. So you really wouldn't have to say, oh, I'll email it to you, although it's not bad. But if you wanted to, you could do host in-person signing. It's gonna say save it, yes. Who's the person signing? You click yes, it's gonna be him, begin signing. And then what happens is it's gonna bring it up for them to then go through and sign it. So. And
I'm just
they would
missing.
do it just with their, I don't know how I just got booted out there, but you would do it, they would do it with just their, the mouse, or if you're on an iPad, they could use their finger and sign it. So,
Okay. So they just do it right there on the spot.
yep, you can do that through that host in-person sign.
Gotcha.
Okay, what other questions?
I'm missing the buyer's due diligence document. I don't know how I missed that.
What do you mean?
Because for this one,
Okay, well, you just do it, just add it then.
add document,
But that's not the add document.
no,
You gotta click on it actually where it says add document. Right there.
okay.
Then you would go to templates. All C2N MLS forms on the left. And then type in buyer due diligence. So, okay, what other questions?
Oh, Ross,
Yeah.
I was entertaining a phone call when you were going over this about my listing. But you know where you have the Rick Bentley and then your wife up
Yep.
on the contract name, where it says Rick Bentley and Jessica Orchard. Did you type it in like that as their name, or did you add each one of their names and then it just puts it in like that? Did I ask correctly? Or
Yeah,
it's 5 to 11. If you want, you can just explain it to me. I can ask you in person.
so where I did it to put that information in for right there was under the autofill.
Okay,
Clicked autofill and then I just put their names in as seller 1 and seller 2 and then it automatically dropped them in.
okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay, sounds good.
All right. Hopefully this was helpful and thanks for being here. The biggest thing I would say, get in and play around with it. Don't do submit for review if you're playing around though, but you can get in and play. Oh, yeah, actually, let me show you one last thing. So with these, if you get in and played around, I mean, you can see I just created a couple of test ones. So once you're done with that, same within the loops, but I can archive. So right here where it shows archive, if I just click on that, that one's now archived. So you cannot delete anything from this system. You can only archive it. So those are now, that one's now archived. Same thing with the documents here. So let's say that like on this form, I was like, I don't really need it anymore. There's not a way to delete, but if you click on these 3 dots, I can archive and then bam, you can see it just moved it. So that one has now been archived. So it's not, you can't see it here anymore. It just keeps it cleaner. But if I wanted to ever get the archived back, there's show archived and boom, it's now showing it's still there. So you can't delete anything, but you can archive stuff. So if you decided I don't want this in there, because whatever reason you put it in and realized it was the wrong form or you wanted to redo it for some reason, just archive it and then you could come and add document and put a new one in. So. And so basically get in and play around with it and then just archive stuff once you're done. And so you can see that one's archived and I'll archive this one now too. So I think I do have it showing archives up here somewhere. I don't remember where to turn that on or off. But anyway, but you can archive them and then they just are, you don't have to worry about. Yeah, here we go. Hide archived. Oh, so now those ones are gone. So I turned the filters off. Cool. Okay. Thanks for being here.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Russ.
So, no class next week because we have the climb event that the company's participating in. So no class.
All right, thank you.